Hey there, I'm Ari from Tech Buyers Guru, and I've got the long-awaited review of the new Silverstone SETA A1 ATX case launching today, January 15th, 2020. Now, if you caught my preview back in December of 2019, you'll know that this has a couple of really cool features, particularly for the price point it's coming in at, and that is the solid aluminum front panel. It's a curved panel. It's all one piece, really nice piece of metal. And that's something you don't typically see on any PC case, particularly mid-priced cases. The other thing that we have are dual 200mm fans hiding behind that front fascia, and I will show you those a little bit later. Now, first, a little bit of a step back and a look at the history of Silverstone and why this is potentially the most important case they've launched in years. Back a decade ago, in 2010, Silverstone was at the top of its game and frankly at the top of the PC case market. Its Raven and Fortress lines were synonymous with high-end quality cases. If you were shopping for a high-end case then, I mean a really premium case, you were looking at Silverstone and you were looking at Fortress for aluminum or Raven for extreme high airflow. Now, those are kind of long gone. You can still buy some of the older models, but they really haven't been refreshed in years. And Silverstone is pressing reset on its case lineup for 2020. And the very first high-end case that we're seeing is the SETA A1. Without further ado, let's take a look at what the SETA has to offer. So let's jump right into it. Of course, these are the dual 200mm fans mounted in front that provide a full wall of air to the interior of this chassis and make this case so unique. It has filtered air intakes. The left filter is for the power supply on the bottom, and the right filter is for those front fans. I did find that front filter a little hard to remove. Getting into the case is quite simple thanks to this nice sliding glass panel. It sits in a rail and has 2 screws in the back. I like this a lot more than cheaper designs that just attach from the side with 4 thumb screws. Speaking of cheap, the inside of the case does feel a little bit cheap. It seems like it's from a lower end case. It doesn't have builder friendly features like grommets or cable guides. In the back you see the VGA mount, which I don't think is very useful in a case like this, plus the 120mm fan. Those 200mm fans look a whole lot more impressive in this case and provide a lot of airflow, even if they're partially blocked. I found a similar issue on the back of the case. That fan mount could fit a 140mm fan, but its additional airflow would be mostly blocked. Taking a look behind the motherboard, we see the hard drive caddies and solid state drive trays. First thing I did was take out these hard drive caddies. I had no use for them, and I actually found them pretty hard to remove because of the angle you have to use to get your screwdriver in. It's really not that builder friendly. You can see when I take this tray out that, like I said, it does fit a 3.5-inch drive, or inside you can put a 2.5-inch drive. So the case has a total of 4 2.5-inch bays. I was a little surprised that the dual 200mm fans use 3-pin DC connectors as opposed to 4-pin PWM. At least the addressable RGB has a standard connector, and the 2 strips are on a Y-splitter, so you only need to use 1 header on your motherboard. In terms of USB, you do get a true USB 3.2 Type-C and the USB 3.2 Type-A connector for a total of 3 USB ports on the front of the chassis. The case includes this addressable RGB hub with 4 ports. You only need to use one of the ports for the Y-splitter for the front RGB elements, so you'd have 3 more ports to use for other addressable RGB devices. You can connect it to the motherboard. You do need to power it up with SATA power. Alternatively, you can actually control it via the box itself without a motherboard addressable RGB header. You just press that button to cycle through the different patterns. Here's a close-up look at that addressable RGB implementation by Silverstone. It's very professional, and here are your 3 USB ports. You also have a magnetic fan filter that makes it very easy to install fans. And here's a look at the SETA A1 with the system built up and running. Notice that my 165mm tall Noctua cooler has no trouble fitting. Taking a look in the back, there's plenty of room for all my cables, unlike some previous Silverstone chassis, and you can also see where the 2 SSDs mount. Here's a quick look at those dual 200mm fans in front. They are truly silent at idle and run at only 800 RPMs at maximum load. And here's a look at the chassis straight on, which shows you just how short it is from front to back. Not only does that translate to a small footprint, it also means those front fans are extraordinarily effective at cooling your components. Speaking of cooling, let's get into some benchmarks. Here's the idle benchmark, which shows the Silverstone SETA A1 extraordinarily quiet. It's just as quiet as the Silverstone PS14e, which has just a single rear fan. The Silverstone SETA A1, of course, has dual front fans plus a rear fan. And when compared to the Be Quiet Pure Bass 500, when used with its solid noise absorbing top, the Setta A1 is actually much quieter, despite having similar temperatures. Moving on to the CPU-Z stress test on the Ryzen 5 3600X processor, we see the Setta A1 again doing extremely well. It's tied for quietest and tied for coolest. Finally, here's my Battlefield 4 multiplayer benchmark, where the GTX 1080 is definitely getting a workout. Again, we see the Setta A1 performing incredibly well. It's much quieter than the other cases in this roundup, while providing the best cooling for both the CPU and GPU. That's a clear win-win. Now that we've seen this case inside and out and gone over the benchmarks, let's get into some conclusions. Truth is, this case really surprised me. It's basically the perfect quiet computing case. It provides great airflow with little fuss. I believe that they originally intended this to be a classy gaming case. What they came up with was a classy professional case. And the reason I say that is because it's extremely quiet, particularly for the cooling performance it provides. It's got that classy aluminum front cover, which kind of says professional to me more than gaming. They threw in a little bit of RGB. By the way, I've added a little bit more RGB in here just to kind of accentuate the look. I'm using some LSO4 light strips from Silverstone in there. But ultimately, RGB does not make a case a gaming case, and neither do those 200 millimeter fans in front. And that's because they limited them to 800 RPM. And the backstory behind that is that their European partners, the system integrators, said, you know, we really like the look of this concept when they were shown it in prototype phase, but we don't think it's going to be a great seller as a gaming case. We want this to be a quiet computing case. And so Silverstone obliged and cut the RPM level of those big fans in front to 800 RPM, and came up with an amazing quiet computing case. This thing blew away the Pure Bass 500, which I benchmarked it against, which is designed for quiet computing. Of course, it has all sorts of noise padding. It has special design on top to kind of block out noise. Nothing about this was designed to be quiet, and yet it's super quiet because it has giant fans in front that are getting tons of air through these cutouts, top and bottom, and it just works for airflow. You get that solid front panel in terms of the looks, but you have the airflow of a huge open gaming case, and they took advantage of that by using really quiet, huge fans. I mean, this whole front fascia is covered in fans. So the end result is a case that is really amazing and blows the doors off of every other quiet computing case I've used. With that said, I do have some concerns about it, and that is that I can sense that this was built on a really cheap chassis. You know, every computer manufacturer out there needs to retool existing product lines, and I think that's what they did with the Alta S1, or I should say the Setta A1. Sorry, I get confused between the new lines. The Setta A1 is their first product in the new Setta line. Of course, they're trying to revamp their entire product line, top to bottom, front to back, left to right, all at once for 2020. And that's really hard to do. You can't come up with like 10 new cases at once. Nobody can, no matter how big you are. So what they've done is reuse some tooling from existing cases, and I think it feels a little bit cheap. I think the interior of this case feels like a $60 or $80 case, not a $120 case. But yes, that is the final price. So launching today at $120, the Setta A1 is actually still a really good value. Okay, I don't like the interior of it that much. It doesn't feel super premium, but ultimately that's like the least important of all the criteria that I judge it on. I love the looks of it. I love the airflow. I love how quiet it is. And I just love the overall package. And at that price, $120, I think it's extremely competitive. So overall, how many stars do I give this? This is going to be a game time decision. I'm going to call it 4.5 out of 5 stars. You get an attractive exterior design, finely tuned performance, and a good package overall, let down only by its slightly cheap feeling interior. So stay tuned for more case reviews from the Tech Buyers Guru. As always, I'm Ari. Please do like and subscribe and post your questions down below. And of course, I will catch you soon.